Now we're going to move over to the backhand side. The backhand faults and fixes are almost identical to the forehand side. You either hit the ball into the net, or you hit the ball long or wide to either of the two corners. In general, the fixes are going to be identical. Remember, if the ball is going in the net, it's typically caused because the racket head is not getting below that ball enough to give the lift up over to get it up over the net. Remember, we deal with gravity. You hit straight through a ball, the ball is going to go down because gravity pulls it into the net. You can do this a couple different ways. Number one is make sure that the racket head drops down below the net. Don't keep it up here and hit straight through the ball. Let it drop to give the lift up over. Number two, if you'll watch my knees, they actually do bend. That helps drop the racket head down as well. If you're trying to stand straight and hit, you're not going to get that racket head below the ball. Just from bending your knees, which will help your power on top of the control to keep that racket head below the net, just by bending the knees, you will get that racket head down and get the lift. Whether you hit a one or a two-handed backhand, it really doesn't matter. The same things apply. Let the racket head drop to give the lift on a one-handed backhand. Let that racket head drop to give the lift on the two-handed backhand. They're both identical. Whether you hit one or two-handed backhands, it really doesn't matter. Just take a look at your style and your body type to see which is better for you personally. But in general, the simple fix again, balls into the net, make sure that racket head gets below the ball enough. That will be a simple fix. The number two thing that happens most commonly is the balls that are going long. That happens typically because of a couple different things. Number one is people hit the ball very late on the backhand. A lot of that is caused because we're afraid of the ball and we're afraid of the backhand side. So we let that ball get on top of us, which opens the racket face up. Just by making sure we gain that confidence and move forward into the ball, watch the racket face. Back here, racket face is open. Let me show it from this angle so you can see it a little better. On the back foot, hitting out in front, racket face is open, the ball is going to take off. Just by, with the same exact grip, by moving that weight forward, the racket face is straight up and down at contact. That will keep the ball in the court. So make sure that as we're hitting our backhand, we're driving our weight forward, making that contact. One-handed backhand, our contact point is a foot in front of the front foot. So we want to make contact with that ball way out here rather than back in here. You're back in here, you're having to twist the shoulders, you're having to do a lot of different things, wrist, whatever, to get the racket face in the right position to keep it into the court. So if we learn to catch that ball in front and attack from low to high, we'll be able to generate the spin. So number two thing that causes that, again, is caused by the racket face being open. If you close that racket face on the backswing, that will make the racket face vertical at contact. Whether it's a one or a two-hander, the racket face will be vertical at contact. Remember, the contact point between the one and the two-hander is different. The two-handed backhand, our contact point is right in front of the front foot. It's not a foot in front of the front foot. It's right in front of the front foot, the same as on our forehand. One-handed backhand goes out further. Again, so we have a nice strong wrist and we're making that contact out in front. But those are the two things typically that cause a ball to go long. It's the racket face being open at contact. The remedies: close the racket face on the backswing, makes it vertical at contact, make sure our weight is transferring forward rather than backward, will also get the racket face vertical at contact. That will help keep the ball in the court. So those are two of the things that will cause the ball to go out and long. Make the simple adjustments, and you'll really be happy with the results. The next fault that most people find on their backhand is the one they're trying to hit up the line, and that ball starts to spin outward and pull out of the court. This is normally caused because we're not holding our shoulders as we're hitting the ball. As we're hitting, we're pulling around the ball's getting a side spin like this and pulls out of the court. The remedy to this is make sure that we hold our shoulders straight along the line. So if I'm hitting down the line, I want to make sure those shoulders go straight down the line and I drive right down to my target. That's a two-hander. Exact same thing with the one-hander. Make sure I hold my shoulders so that I can drive that ball straight down the line rather than pulling my shoulders out and get that side spin. You saw it on the forehand side. The exact same thing applies to the backhand side. Whether you hit a one or two-handed backhand, it really doesn't matter. And remember, I go in my other DVDs, my backhand DVD, I go step by step in building a one and a two-handed backhand. If you need to know which one is best for you, go to that DVD and it can really tell you which one would work better for you. But in this particular one, I'm just talking about the faults and fixes. So remember, that shot up the line, make sure we remember to hold our shoulders down that line. Don't pull our shoulders out, and otherwise the ball is going to have the side spin, or you're going to pull it to the middle of the court rather than hit it right up the line. The next one that we hit is the one pulling wide, the hard cross court, either deep or short, it doesn't matter. Same thing applies. As we're hitting, we want to make sure that we hold our shoulders right at our target. Remember that if you're hitting a ball down the line, your contact point can be a little bit later. For instance, if I want to hit a ball down the line, my contact point is right here, I'll drive it right down the line. If I want to hit the ball cross court rather than right here, I've got to move it out here. It's simple angles. Just think the angle that you're trying to direct the ball. If I'm going cross court, I've got to make contact a little earlier, and I hold my shoulders driving right at my target. Another thing that really helps people remember this, with a two-handed backhand especially, is it's just like hitting a one-handed left-handed forehand. So my elbow will point right at my target. So with my two-hander, when I'm done, my elbow will point right at my target. That will be another barometer on whether you're hitting the ball correctly. Hitting down the line, boom, I hold right at my target. Hitting cross court, boom, I hold right at my target. That will direct the ball exactly where you want it to go. But the one pulling cross court, again, you want to make sure that we hold those shoulders and we don't yank the shoulders around. We don't want the shoulders to lead. I tell a lot of people, make sure that your racket head leads out in front. We don't want our shoulders to lead and the racket head lagging back behind. If we do that, we're not going to have the control that we want. So very important on these is make sure that our shoulders hold right at our target. Another thing I see on the backhand side constantly is a lack of power. A lot of this comes because of lack of confidence on our backhand stroke. That's caused because we don't understand that the backhand is actually easier physically than the forehand is. With the backhand, we're throwing our arms away from the body, which is actually easier on our body than the forehand side that we're hitting across our body. Very important to generate the power on our backhand is to understand we've got to get prepared early and make that contact out in front so we can drive our legs and all our body weight out into the ball. Very important as we're hitting. Make sure that racket goes back early. We drive that weight. Notice the legs go down so that we can throw our legs up. These are our power muscles, our legs and our butt. Really use them when we're hitting. Make sure you're driving. All the energy, the kinetic chain or the kinetic energy into the ball comes from the ground through our legs, our hips. Utilize them. So as we're getting there, we're rotating our hips, we're driving that weight out in front. The hips start to unrotate. We're throwing our arm, our racket out in front, making contact again on a one-hander, a foot in front of the front foot. Drive that ball out and up. The other thing that happens too often is we're trying to generate too much spin. If we're generating too much spin, the ball is just going to spin and we're not going to have that ball driving. It's not going to be the driving or heavy ball that we're looking for. So we're hitting, we want to make sure we generate that top spin, but we're driving still out and up through the ball, not just up the back of the ball. Too often we're concentrating so much about hitting up the back of the ball to generate the spin that we don't remember we've got to drive out and up to generate the driving top spin. The two-hander is going to be the same. Get that racket back early. Drive those legs out into the ball, make the contact in front, and throw those arms. Just relax and throw the arms. Remember again, relaxed muscles are strong muscles. As we try to be too tight, our muscles are not very strong. It slows them down. We're trying to get the racket head speed going, and that's done through a nice relaxed motion. That again is why these little kids can hit the ball so hard on top of having a racket that helps them. but they're very, very relaxed as they're hitting, and they just let those arms go. They let that racket go because they trust it. Once you gain the trust in your backhand and you understand that you can attack that ball out in front, you'll generate more power and you'll hit a much, much heavier ball. Another very important part of the backhand is the footwork. Just like on the forehand side, getting your feet in the proper position is a very important aspect of hitting the ball properly. Remember, as a pro, if I look at someone, that's the number one thing I look at, is check their footwork first. Make sure that their feet are in the right position, because it will affect every other part of their stroke if their feet aren't in the proper position. For instance, if I'm going to hit what's called a square stance, which would be here turning sideways, I want to make sure that my feet are here, I'm driving those arms out and going after the ball. That's called a square stance. Everyone should be able to hit a square and an open stance, because many times you won't have time to get back around in order to always square up and hit the ball properly. Sometimes you will have to hit what's called an open stance, where the back foot's planted, we're driving our hips through. You should still be able to hit that. Remember just to drive that racket out through the ball at our target. Whether you're hitting a square stance or an open stance, it really doesn't matter. Big thing I do see that is wrong is closing the stance up too much, which, for instance, a two-hander steps across here and then tries to pull back around. If you watch the body, it's very uncomfortable and it's not a good way to hit. So if we're here, we're stepping all the way across, it's very difficult. It's much better to, if you're coming across to get to that ball, try to get that second foot reset. I call it the big step and then the shortened steps, which is here, big step, shorten those steps up or get them in a good position, and then you can drive the ball. But very important to get your feet in the proper position as we hit the ball. Whether you're hitting the one-hander here, boom, drive at your target. Two-hander, same thing, drive at your target, or hit the two-hander here and throw the hips and generate the power. Again, that's just the difference between a horizontal and vertical power coming off the strings. But it's up to you. Whatever your natural motion is, it's going to be best for you, but you've got to tell me what that is. You've got to see for yourself what that is. But make sure that your feet are in the proper position based on your particular stroke. That's another one that will cause a lot of the problems that we run into. Another thing that really is a problem with most all of our strokes is we do not watch the ball hit the strings. Like every sport out there, you're supposed to keep your head on the ball, watch it to the strings. Golf, tennis, baseball, every ball sport is identical. If you pull your head out too early, you're going to shank the ball. You're not going to hit very clean. Whenever you're not feeling like you're hitting clean and you know your form is proper, I guarantee it's because you're not keeping your head on the ball and watching it to the strings. Watch the greatest players out there right now, Federer, Nardan. Watch them hit a backhand, forehand, whatever it is, and they'll go through their stroke, they'll finish, and their head is still down watching the ball. That's what's so important. They know if they watch the ball and go through the proper form, the ball will go exactly where they want it to go. They don't have to see where the ball goes. They already know it's going there because they've done everything that they need to. The other thing I notice with people hitting is their head's moving a lot as they're trying to hit. Do that. Put your head, run your head to the side and watch your eyes just go like this and it can't focus. Try to keep your head still. Very important. Volleys, overhead, serves, forehand and backhand, that we keep our head still as we're getting ready to hit. So we keep that head still, we can focus right on the ball. Focus on that ball coming right to those strings. Very important. Keep the head still, watch the ball, and I promise you, you will hit much more cleanly. Your shots will be a lot more consistent and a lot cleaner. Watch the ball hit the strings.